Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Downtown San Diego Partnership's Crisis Communication and Empathetic Marketing webinar. This is the third webinar we have hosted to help address the different challenges businesses, organizations, and community members are facing as a result of this crisis. The response has been overwhelming as hundreds of you have turned in. We're happy that these sessions have been valuable, but know that the interest is also reflective of tremendous need. Our fourth in the series will take place next Thursday at noon and will be a focus on COVID and people experiencing homelessness. We will send additional details soon. The ongoing spread of COVID-19 has created an environment of uncertainty that is unprecedented in our region. We know many organizations have been deeply affected by this pandemic, not to mention the concern many of you feel for your coworkers and families. In this kind of environment, it's understandably tough to dedicate mental energy to think through what types of communications are appropriate. Many of you are probably on this call because you're not quite sure what's even okay or what kind of marketing you should be doing at this time. The Downtown Partnership is committed to helping you and your organization navigate this uncertainty. We're hoping today's conversation with local experts will help answer some of the burning questions you might have and provide useful, actionable advice to move you forward. If you have specific questions that aren't answered today, we encourage you to reach out to us at downtownsandiego.org. If we don't have the answers, we can connect you to the people that do. A couple housekeeping notes for today's webinar. We have received many questions in advance, and we will try to address them as time allows. If questions arise during the webinar, please submit them through the Zoom question and answer function. We have enabled upvoting and we'll do our best to answer the top voted questions as time permits. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Supervisor Greg Cox. He's chair of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors and has been working on this issue and many others for just tireless hours. So with that, I'm very happy to introduce Supervisor Cox, and we will have question and answer with him right after he speaks because he has another meeting to go to, and then we'll go to our other panelists. Supervisor Cox?
Well, thank you, Betsy. And again, I want to thank our San Diego business community for being flexible during these obviously very challenging times. Whether you're classified as an essential business or not, you are all essential to enabling our region to follow public health orders and directives and tackle the threat that is clearly before us. We are aware that businesses have taken a heavy toll during this hardship, and please know that we continue to push for support and aid for all of you at all levels of government, whether it's the state or federal or small business administration, wherever resources are out there, we're going to advocate for you. There are many efforts that are being implemented to try to ease the financial struggle that you're going through right now. At the federal level, the Small Business Administration is offering low-interest federal disaster loans for working capital to California small businesses suffering substantial economic injury as a result of the coronavirus. The county is doing weekly conference calls to share information with the business community. I encourage businesses and employers to sign up for email updates and submit questions for our business sector telebriefings, which are every Wednesday at 9:30. More information can be found under the community sector at San Diego county.gov/coronavirus. As the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Fletcher and I have been leading the county's public information response to this crisis. From the very beginning, our priority has been to get out accurate information as quickly as we can to the media and by extension to the public. So we began holding daily media briefings. Our first one was held on March 12th, and we've held one every day since, including over the weekends. In a crisis like this, which changes every day, it's important to establish a set schedule of when you'll be communicating with the media, and we have done that religiously. That is why we've stuck to the daily 2:30 briefings, even when other events like presidential news conferences or governor's news conferences have been held. Though TV stations may cut out and go to the governor or to the president, we understand that. They sometimes have higher priority, but We've provided a live stream every day through Facebook and through Twitter, which is followed by literally thousands of local residents. This crisis is different because we're dealing with a communicable disease. In the beginning, we held our briefings like we normally do, in front of a room full of media. And obviously, we switched to a virtual meeting as we became more enforcing with the social distancing. And it used to be media would be right there to throw questions at us, but now we've basically set it up so that they can either call in or text their questions. And we have the medical professionals there, Supervisor Fletcher. We brought in other people from the California Restaurant Association, from Children's Hospital periodically to focus on specific issues, in addition to what our daily media briefings have been focusing on. This has allowed us to practice social distancing by having the call in and text questions, and it's worked out, I think, fairly well up to this point. You can never truly prepare for a crisis like this, and it's important to use the lessons you've learned from other emergencies. And obviously, we've had a few emergencies over the years, like the fires in 2003 and 2007, and dealt with H1N1, Ebola. So, we've learned some lessons along the way. Probably the most recent one was with the Hep A crisis 2 years ago. Some of the lessons that we've learned is to develop a roster of experts in your organization who can talk about different aspects of the operation. In our case, we have our doctors to give medical updates, but we also have our logistics person, our emergency services person, and our law enforcement people that are there to be brought in periodically to cover different aspects of what we're dealing with. We try to play to the strengths of our speakers. One doctor may be more technical in their response, another may be able to break it down into more manageable and more understandable language, and so we will play to our strengths, I guess is what I'm saying. With this crisis, which has been dominated by bad news over the last several weeks, you have to vary your message. And we've tried to do that by injecting some gentle humor. I know I made reference to Kevin Bacon and the 6 degrees of separation that has been thrown about over the years. Well, we just really focus on 6 feet of separation is what we really want to focus on. And so we try to, bring in some good news, positive news stories, reminders of random acts of kindness that have been going on. And frankly, we love to highlight businesses that are doing things above and beyond the call of duty. I know we gave a shout out to Sprouts because they were one of the first to implement many steps which have been implemented, I think, by a lot of other businesses that are essential, that are open to the public. And we like to do that every day. So if you can give us some help and shoot some random acts of kindness or things that businesses are doing above and beyond the call of duty, we would be happy to try to highlight that. I think in a crisis like this, we got to show our humanity. We know everybody is hurting personally, whether they're just cooped up at home or whether you're a small business that is suffering the consequences of the coronavirus. And so we want to try to mix in those human touches as much as we can in our daily briefings. Before you go out and talk to the media, you want to make sure your speakers and those who are involved in the briefing meet and discuss the order of the speakers, any particular new information, anticipated questions, trending public topics, so that we're prepared to respond to whatever is thrown at us by the media. And sometimes they throw you some curveballs, so you got to be ready to figure out the most accurate and most appropriate response when those questions come up. And you prepare your customers for what to expect as the crisis unfolds. You want to let them know to expect long lines or long waits on the phone if they call. And I think we've been as honest as we can about and transparent as we can with the media and the public, and telling them that cases will spike. And we still probably haven't hit the apex of what we're dealing with. But the good news is that the curve looks like in San Diego County, at least, that it's been flattened significantly. I wish I could tell you today that this is all going to be over in 30 days or 60 days. I can't do that. But we have taken our directives and we've made modifications to them, initially tightening them up more so that now you can't even have any social gatherings of any size out in the public. But we also have been doing that in an effort to try to ensure that we limit or stop the spread of coronavirus. And again, I think these steps are giving some early indications that we're succeeding in that. The directives and orders that have been put in place initially were until further notice. Earlier this week, we modified that to be through April 30th. So all of the directives in regards to social distancing and the essential businesses having the limitations that they have are in effect till April 30th. Does that mean that on May 1st that everything's going to be great and we're going to go back to our more normal life? Well, probably not, but it means that we will reassess, and as circumstances change, there's a possibility we might be able to lighten up some of the restrictions that we have had in place for the benefit of the citizens of San Diego County. So, that's kind of a snapshot of what we're trying to do at the County of San Diego to make sure that our citizens are aware of what's going on with the crisis we're dealing with, and make sure that they also try to comply. We don't like to be heavy-handed in how we deal with issues, but we have these directives and we expect people to abide by them, and if they don't, well, we do have the ability to have law enforcement take actions to make sure that people comply. But again, our goal is to not cite people or to fine them or to incarcerate them, but to get compliance with the orders that are out there. And that's kind of where we are right now. So thanks for the opportunity to kind of explain what we've been doing and what we hope to achieve over the next few weeks.
Well, thank you so much, Supervisor Cox. Just for me personally, I just wanted to send you a sincere thanks. I really appreciate the daily briefings. I watch them with my kids here at home, and I know it's really important for downtown. And on behalf of our 400 members, thank you for everything you're doing. And I'm sure between our 400 members and the 250 people signed up for this webinar today, we can find some good acts for you to highlight. So thank you for that offer. We'll take you up on that for sure. For San Diego, nationally, San Diego has been held up as an example of a city that's doing things right, or a region that's sort of doing things right. Why do you think San Diego is where it is today?
Well, let me also just make one other point. Supervisor Fletcher has done a yeoman's job. He and I were designated by the board to be the co-chairs, if you will, of the coronavirus as far as dealing with the media and the press and the doctors. But let me tell you that every supervisor on the board, Kristen Gaspar in her district, Jim Desmond in his, and Diane Jacob in her district, have all been going out, meeting with groups, listening to their concerns, trying to respond to what their needs are to make sure that wash stations or porta potties or the medical resources were being directed to their hospitals in their regions. I think we've learned a lot of lessons. When we dealt with the fires in 2003, we were pretty flat-footed. By 2007, we are much better prepared. We've invested a lot of money in aerial fire suppression, and I think the Lilac fire we had a couple of years ago was confined to 4,100 acres. That's an indication that we've learned from the past. And I think we've learned from the more recent viral infection that we had with the Hep A a couple of years ago. So we were pretty quick on the draw on declaring a public health emergency because we saw the potential. We saw what was going on in China and Italy and Korea. And so, some people were, criticizing us because they thought we were too quick to jump in and declare a public health emergency and put in some places some of the things that we've done over the last few weeks. But it's been a good regional effort. I have to say, Mayor Faulkner has been very supportive. When we had some of the first directives, we invited the mayors of all the cities in San Diego County to come down for a joint press conference. So we're all working together. And I think the county's role as being primarily the service provider for public health and social services for the entire region has been gearing up. And our employees have just been doing an outstanding job. The number of people that are signing up for food stamps, new applicants, has increased by 92% over the last 2 weeks. And we know that there's a lot of people that are hurting and that we need to be prepared to respond to them in the most expeditious way that we can. And I think we've been doing that. Now, are we perfect? Well, we're not perfect. We will make mistakes. We probably have made some mistakes, but we're pretty quick to learn from our past efforts and to improve those services. But the coordination and the cooperation between law enforcement and the 8 cities that have their own police departments and sheriff's department, the efforts in our social services department, I think reaching out to cities to see what they need has been exemplary.
Great. And we know that you have a lot of other meetings to go to, so I'm going to ask one more question that came in from people on registered for the webinar. What has been the most challenging part of communicating with the public during this crisis?
Well, I think unfortunately, social media could be a tool for the positive, but it can also be a tool for the negative. I think we've been able to get our message out much quicker because of social media, but at the same time, there's people that are saying, "Oh, this is all a big hoax. It's it's a conspiracy. You don't have to do any of that stuff." People that are coming up with false information that gets out and unfortunately gets replicated or disseminated through social media. So, we kind of feel our role is to just lay out what the facts are and be up to date and current in the information we're providing. The media briefings, I think, have been, very helpful getting out accurate information, having the medical professionals there that can respond to questions from the media, which I think are reflective of questions that the general public has. For the most part, I think is very helpful and very beneficial.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Supervisor Cox, and we appreciate your strong leadership and that of the county and the city during this really trying time for us. So have a wonderful day, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you, Betsy. And
I
would just make one final comment. I know on Monday at our media briefing, we're going to be bringing in some people from the Small Business Administration and perhaps the
partnership.
To talk about things that are going on in the business community.
Great. Thank you so much, Supervisor.
Thanks.
I would now like to welcome Derek Danziger. He's the president of Katz and Associates. Katz is a communications firm headquartered in San Diego that specializes in strategic communication, public involvement, and community relations. Derek is up. Thank you for joining us, Derek.
Hi, thank you, Betsy. Thank you to everybody that's taking time to participate on the call today. And I'm obviously very sorry that we're all in this situation, but when situations like this come up, it gives us a great opportunity to all talk together and see how we can share resources and information. And that's one of these times right now. I'm also very grateful to Betsy and the Downtown Partnership for allowing me and obviously Margie to have a chance to talk to everybody here. We appreciate that opportunity, and also grateful to Supervisor Cox, Supervisor Fletcher, and everybody at the county that's doing such a wonderful job right now. So the interesting thing as we sit here today is, for Margie and for me, I mean, our daily life is providing crisis communications, media training, public relations counsel to people, and for the first time that I can ever remember, we're sitting here where we're all dealing with this in the middle of the very same situation for each other. So this is a very unique time. And so the way that we've structured the discussion today is for me to provide more of a kind of high-level overarching update on things, and then Margie will get into a little more tactical, and then we'll be happy to answer questions that we go there. So the first thing that I want to mention is that we hear a lot of talk about crisis communications, but I really do think that there's a fundamental difference between what we call crisis communications and then communication during a crisis. And so in my opinion, I think we're in the latter part of that right now. A true crisis communication situation is when something has happened and it's a fire, it's a shooting, it's whatever's going on that an organization in real time is having to deal with and monitor. We all know that what we're dealing with now, so that nuance has changed. And now we're in a period of time about understanding, well, how are we supposed to communicate to our staff members or to our customers or things in this? We all know what's going on out there. So how do we do that? And how do we strike that balance between not sounding self-promotional or tone deaf or other things during that time? And I think that's what we want to make sure that we're talking about today with everybody. So just for a little bit of context, my company, Captain Associates, like all of you or many of you on the call, is a small business. We have less than 40 people on our team, headquartered in San Diego with offices in San Francisco and Los Angeles. And so we, like everybody else, are having to make the exact same sort of real-time decisions that everybody else is making as it relates to both communicating with our clients, communicating with our staff, looking at operational budgets and understanding how that's going to impact what we're able to do and what we're able to provide. So just to give you the context of us, we've already determined to cancel our leases in San Francisco and LA for the time being, as we have everybody teleworking like most of you. We're looking at every element of our operations budget to understand that. And then we're communicating that with our team, because one of the things that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this is a time where internal communication is as important or even maybe more important than external communication, because everybody on your team wants to know what's happening and be mindful of what's going on. And I know, again, when Margie starts talking, she'll get into a lot of the more tactical things, but I wanted to talk, and I saw, and I apologize that my screen is not letting me see some of the questions that are being submitted, but those will be relayed to me. So if I haven't answered something that people are posting, I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. But the first most important thing that I think we all have to think about right now is the element of trust. And who do we go to? Who do we trust to be the spokespeople? And I saw some recent surveys that many of you have probably also seen as well, that show that right now, at least on the federal government side of things, the two most trusted voices in America are Dr. Fauci and Andrew Cuomo in New York, followed by Gavin Newsom. So if you were to say, who are people going to and they feel that they're going to get the most accurate information, it's those folks. And so just like your organization, you need to look at who is that most trusted voice in your organization that your people should make sure is the one that's delivering any kind of messaging. The second thing that I want to walk through is I put a list together, and this is actually going to be shared on a slide that will, this will be shared on a slide. Hang on, can people hear me?
Yep.
Oops, sorry. Okay, sorry. You can hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, Derek, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So the elements of communication that are most important during this time are, number one, be transparent and truthful. The truth is always going to come out. So if you're saying anything to clients or customers that comes out and isn't correct, that will come out in the end. We're all looking for transparency. We're all looking for trusted voices. So that should be the number one consideration of things that you're looking at. Number two is be consistent. You want to make sure that you don't deviate from providing regular updates and communications, both to your team and to your customers, to your clients. So make sure that there is a consistency in what you're doing. Number three would be to over-communicate. Any of you that work in public relations, advertising, or any of those kind of fields, marketing, there's an adage out there that people have to hear something 7 times before they hear it 1 time. And especially in the consumer side of things, they hear something 7 times before they're aware of it. And then they hear it another 7 times before they make a decision to purchase something. So if we extrapolate that to the type of communication we're dealing with now and the numbers of messages that we all get during this time period, you have to make sure you're over communicating with people. But I think that the important consideration on this one is that is especially true if you're a government agency or you're somebody that's providing an essential service. But by the same token, if you're a small business, a small retail or a small business, you don't need to be inundating people right now with information, because it's going to look like you're trying to spam them or do things there. You want to pick and choose your tactics there, and I know Margie will get into more of that. You also want to be compassionate with people. We are all dealing with emotional stress right now. We're dealing with physical stress. We're dealing with isolation and all that. So be compassionate with people. And then lastly, just make sure you're repeating the info. So you're providing regular updates to folks as part of that. And both internal and external communication is absolutely essential. So don't forget your employees, because you're so focused on the external messages that you should be thinking about that. The other thing you want to do is establish who is going to be your company's or your organization's spokesperson, because with spokespeople, the biggest problem people have is sticking to messaging and making sure that there's a consistency of messaging in what you're talking about. And so as with Supervisor Cox and what he was talking about, they've established that Supervisor Cox and Nathan Fletcher are the two people going out there and speaking. So just like your organization, determine who those people are, review and update your messages that you want to communicate on a regular basis, but make sure that communication is limited to either your comms person, your president, your CEO, however that's done. And I think it's another thing that Supervisor Cox referenced that I think is unique, that's both good and bad, is social media. So we all live and breathe social media today. A lot of us get our news on Twitter before we ever see it on mainstream media or whatever. But the challenge with that is if you are there and your staff is tweeting about stuff, people, especially with big companies, everybody that watches or follows people on Twitter, they don't know if the things that somebody is saying as a representative of your organization are because your organization feels that way, or those are that person's personal beliefs. So essentially what social media has done is it's empowered everybody on every team to be a spokesperson for their organization, whether the organization likes that or not. And there's tons of organizations that have established social media policies and things like that. But in a time of crisis, that can be even more challenging than before. And then the last couple things I just wanted to share, and I'll turn it over to Margie. Mark Cuban, the Shark Tank host, the billionaire and the owner of the Mavericks, he said a quote that he put out recently, and I thought it was an interesting one. He said, "A brand will be remembered for how it treats its people in times of crisis." And while I agree with him that obviously we're looking at how brands are treating all of us and people, I don't think it should be a time of crisis that we look at what our brand is. Our brand should define us in good times and bad times, and that what we would be doing to our employees to help them or anything we would do no matter what the circumstance was. But it was really an interesting thing. And I also just want to share another thing is, if you've all followed, just as an example, the recent USS Roosevelt discussion and what's happened there. I have a personal friend who is stationed he's a fighter pilot on the USS Roosevelt, and he sent a Facebook post out about how upset that everybody was that it was being communicated that nobody liked their commanding officer and all of this was going down. And I understand all the protocols and things like that, but what I found interesting was I sent him a message and said, "Hey, would you be okay if I reshared your post about how your crew is feeling about this whole situation?" And he said, "Absolutely." And I shared it on social media, and within a few minutes, I had media calling me, asking if they could get in touch with him on social media. So I'm just showing that as an example of the power of when we're putting things out on social media, that is the case. And then the last point I'll make, and then I'm concluding, I promise, is out of every crisis that we deal with comes opportunity. There's companies born out of this. There's mergers and acquisitions that happen. There's things that happen. So it's important that while we're so focused on the now, we also don't lose sight of the future. And so I hope people are thinking there, and especially those of us in leadership positions, we need to be looking forward as what is the next step? What are we thinking after we get through all of this to make sure that that's done? So I will conclude there. We as a firm, just so you know, we've been releasing a series of blogs. And again, with the notion of not trying to be self-promotional or anything, but just on our captainassociates.com website, blogs about communicating during a time of crisis. And I'm having screen issues, but I've put together a slide that basically summarizes all of the things that I've been talking about here today that will be made available to all of you. And on our website, you can read that blog. And I'm also happy to answer questions offline as well. So I will stop there, and I look forward to hearing from Margie now.
Thank you so much, Derek. And yes, as a reminder, in our recap email, we'll send out all of the slides and contacts and materials in case you can't see them quickly on your screen or you're calling in. So thank you so much, Derek. And with that, I have the pleasure of introducing Margie Newman. She is the founding partner of Intessa Communications. Intessa is a San Diego-based communications and government relations firm. And Margie is going to walk us through some actionable steps you can take.
Me to unmute myself, so I will try that. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Great to see all of you today, even if it's just in little squares and participant numbers. Again, I'm Margie Newman. Intessa is a small business, just like many of you on the call, but we help companies of all sizes communicate with confidence in both crisis and opportunity. And clearly this pandemic is offering plenty of both crisis and opportunity. And so we want to talk you through what you can think about tactically, keeping in mind there are 175 of you on the call, so we can't get extraordinarily specific. I mean, healthcare is going to handle this differently than higher ed, than a small business, than a restaurant. So just know that if you were talking with Derek and I one-on-one, we'd get much more detailed because any kind of communication, you need to think about your audience first and what you know about them and what your business goals are. But we can hit on some things that I think could be helpful for you today. First, you want to think about the foundation that Derek laid for you, thinking about communicating in a crisis versus crisis communications. We're going to talk really about right now. Particularly very goal-oriented and audience-oriented. We can do that separately if anybody has that need. But right now you want to start with what is the reality of your consumer and also your staff. We know the San Diego Workforce Partnership put out a report last week that said up to 350,000 San Diegans could lose their job. You also have people who are just really fighting for the very basics of survival right now: health, safety, shelter, being able to pay rent. So you can't separate your marketing message and your communications needs from their reality. You don't have to dwell on it. You just have to make sure you validate that first. The second thing you want to think about as a leader and a business owner is that you also have a lot of opportunity here. So we know that nearly 40%, and this is according to an Ad Age study, and we'll be sharing all these links. It may be happening in real time, I can't really tell, or it definitely will be as a follow-up. But there's an Ad Age article that came out that was talking about how just in the past month, 40% of online grocery shoppers said this was their first online grocery store purchase. So we know that there's kind of this new normal and that behaviors are changing, and that presents an opportunity for you to communicate with folks in a different way. We know also from some studies in the month of March, the longest month in the history of the world, that new product launches are a no-go right now. If it's not extraordinarily relevant to this current situation for your staff and for your clients, for your customers, it can wait. So right now you want to focus on things that is familiar and comfortable. We know from data that right now people are seeking comfort and what is familiar, and like Derek said, building trust. So if you have items that you want to communicate that build that trust and tell about those comfortable and familiar things, that is what your audience is going to most resonate with. The other thing to think about before we get into the hard tactics is you can seize the day as business owners. There are so many ways that people like me and you and Derek, who are leading organizations, can really pivot. And if you need some kind of food for thought on that, the Harvard Business Review, which normally hides a lot of its articles behind a paywall, has a really great leadership and working in the pandemic page that it's set up in front of the paywall. And I would encourage you, they're going to share a link right there. Good job, Taylor. That will give you, there's also a branding in COVID-19 article, but I would encourage you to check those out because those resources are free right now. And if as a leader, you're feeling a little stuck in how to talk about this, those are some things you can read. Also a friendly reminder that, as Derek said, yes, you want a team that's thinking about this crisis right now. And you need a team or a person thinking about your communications, your PR, your marketing, the next quarter, 6 months from now, whatever it is. You need to have that separation, someone who can still think of fresh ideas and not be pulled down. Now, if you're too small, that's where consultants come in. There are plenty of people in this town who could help you think through those things and take kind of that burden off of you so that you can focus on the now. So what's appropriate? You know, I think when we asked the Downtown Partnership, what do you think your members want to hear? You know, one of the team members said, I think people just need permission on what they can and can't do, what's appropriate, what's not. So we'll go ahead and throw this slide up of things to think about here. The first one is just know that permission is granted. You absolutely can talk about you know, your story, getting your story out there. So how do we really do that? The first thing you really want to think about is the goal of communicating during this crisis is to be memorable. Again, we know that the data are saying that people want what is comfortable, what is familiar, and they want to build trust. So you want to think about, as a business of any size, this is not just for the big ones, as a business, what is it that you can say about your values and your commitment to your staff? I know that it sounds maybe not as sexy as selling a product, but your customers really care about how you're treating your people right now. So communicating to them about your values and your commitments to your staff, to your employees, is a marketing tactic. You can say that. You absolutely should be saying those things. You also should talk just about your commitments to your customers, safety, health, or just product. And then also the community. If you're making face masks right now, if you're doing helping with a ventilator study, talk about that. That is marketing, because marketing right now is about being memorable. And that's the goal right now, is staying top of mind for when people are able to buy things and just kind of have fun again. HG Fenton, a client, but and also a local developer, you should go to their Instagram page. They've been doing a great job with having their CEO, Mike Neal, start each day. I don't know if they do it daily now, but at the beginning, it was each day just talking to people about their commitments to their staff. And it was a great internal marketing. It was true, first of all, and it was also just great to have that positive message coming out. And then they put, hey, we're doing this on their Instagram feed. And I see that their marketing manager is telling me it is still each day. Thanks, Veronica. It is still each day that their CEO opens with that message. And then they show the public a screenshot of that message on their Instagram. That endears their customer. Lead with humanity is another thing that you should do. If you're doing a video, social media, if you're doing an ad campaign, if you're going to invest in those things, and you should, make sure you lead with the human element right now. The YMCA of San Diego County did one of the best videos I've seen in a long time that had their CEO in an empty Jackie Robinson YMCA. It's normally bustling. And he is saying, we're going through this. It is hard. We need people to stay with us as members. We need their money. Here's why. But we know that some of you can't do that. And so if we can help you instead, call us. And it gives you chills. And if you're able to, it makes you want to give them money. And if you're not, you don't feel judged. They led with the human element, but they still got their message across that they need something. And so it wasn't sketchy, right? It wasn't asking for something when people are struggling. It was leading with that human element, and it was really well done. The other thing is to think about the customer mindset. I mean, now, again, we are all thinking, what's in it for me? And that doesn't make us selfish. It makes us human. And so if you're about to send out an email communication or text messages to staff members or to customers, you have to channel that customer mindset first. What is in it for me as the consumer? And if you can't answer that question, don't send it. Wait till you can answer that question. You want to be a resource before you make an ask. And I know there's 175 people on here. Everyone's need and ask is different. And so that's why this is a little generic right now, because we don't want to alienate folks, but you really need to think about these as a group, as a team, and then go out and tell that story. That's not a bad thing. It's what you should be doing. The USS Midway shared, I don't know if you guys can see it, but a good example of this on our panelist chat window here is that they're giving virtual tours now. I know SeaWorld is doing it. A lot of folks are doing it. That is what's in it for me as a consumer, because I'm trying to keep my 5 and 8-year-old from coming into this screen right now during this webinar. I need things to occupy them that are educational. And a lot of these folks, there's the USS Midway again, are doing that. And so I would encourage you to look around and see who's doing what. One thing that you may overlook in this time, because people are just guns blazing, is marketing in English and Spanish. This is critical. And the reason is because, again, what the data tell us is that people want what is comfortable, what is familiar. They want to cling to those things. That's why everyone's baking bread right now in their house. Yeast sales have gone up like 40% nationwide. So what we know about the data is that even if you speak Spanish and English fluently, which about 3/4 of Spanish-speaking millennials in the United States speak English perfectly well. And we know that the data tell us that they still are much more pulled in literally, emotionally, and just with these are my people, like this is a company I want to stick with, when you market to them in Spanish, even if they speak English, even if they were born and raised here. So you cannot overlook, if your audience, if you know there are a group of them who are Spanish speaking, don't just translate into Spanish, market to them in Spanish. Send emails in Spanish only. Do advertising in Spanish only. The community colleges seem to do this well, but a lot of businesses forget about that, and it's really vital. And if you're saying I don't have someone who can help me with that, again, there's plenty of consultants in town that could help you really think through that. And then finally, you want to practice message discipline. This is especially true for the bigger organizations. These bigger organizations, as Derek said, lots of people have access to social media. Supervisor Cox said it too. You want to be nimble, of course, and flexible, but you want to really tell your folks, this is our message this week. This is what we're saying. Someone who did a really good job of this recently was San Diego State University. They have so many things they talk about, but they really reined it in. And they said, we're going to talk about COVID-19 for these 2 weeks. And then this week, we're going to do this other thing. And then just this week, they said, okay, now we're going to push out a little bit of storytelling. And they were really disciplined about their message. And I was really impressed by that. And then the things you want to invest in, and I won't go into examples of all of these, but this is where you need to think about where to put your money right now. You'll see up on the screen in a second that there you go. You want to invest in relevant products and services, email campaigns, your pivot as a business. Again, telling your story about these things. Social media advertising. We're all on our phones and computers constantly right now. We're at home. Invest in these things. Direct mail. Again, this is something the community colleges do really well. I'm getting mailers all the time from community colleges now that I'm at home. Direct mail is not dead, and I encourage you to look into that. Search engine optimization as well. People are Googling, where can I get takeout and a bottle of wine? If that's something you offer, you need to be doing advertising to draw those people in. Same thing with YouTube, because we all have our children and our teenagers and watching videos. Do those pre-advertisements before that. And then handwritten notes. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a note writer. So I can't get out there and see people. I'm writing them letters at their house. And then media relations. The healthcare industry has nailed this one, hiring up a bunch of consultants to say, hey, you can talk to us. If you have a story to tell, you should get out there in the media and tell it. And again, if you're short-staffed, there are people who can help you with that. And so I really would encourage you to think through these things, and these slides will be available. And then here's the stuff to avoid just really quickly, and then we'll turn it over to questions. You want to avoid, again, non-relevant product launches. If this is just, wouldn't it be fun if we launched this or did this in the downtime? No, because no one cares. No one's able to care right now. Do this storytelling first, then you can do those sorts of things. You want to avoid spamming with deals and attempts to turn inventory that are just 50% off this and come by this. Again, people are deleting that. Over promising, you want to stay in your lane. You want to under promise and over deliver. But in your communications, don't feel like you have to say everything right now, because you may just have to correct it later. Just kind of stay in your lane and try not to over promise. Anything that makes you look like Captain Obvious, you should avoid as well. You don't have to re-educate people. Oh, there's my favorite running away baby slide. Avoid these things. Anything that where you're saying, hey, there is this thing called the coronavirus. We are all under lockdown. Let's tell you about it. Don't waste your time. Just start with your story, your values, your human element, and what you're going to do for your customer right now, how you're pivoting your business right now, no matter how large or small your business is. And you don't have to re-educate folks. You don't have to be the CDC or anything like that. You can really just be you right now. And that's what people want to see. That's, all the data we have right now is telling us that. So I'll kick it over to questions. And these slides, again, will be made available, as well as all the links that I mentioned as well.
Thank you so much, Margie. I think we'll start with some of the questions that were submitted with registration, and then we'll go to the question and answer. And I would encourage people to go ahead and ask these questions. We'll spend the next 12 to 14 minutes getting through as many as we can. So for Margie and for Derek too, we had a question from Jonine about the best ways to keep internal marketing up. Newsletters, contests about their favorite dog, daily quotes, videos, what kind of things would help with keeping their staff communicated with and their morale up during this time.
Who do you want to take that one first?
Derek can take it first, I guess, and then you, if that works.
Sure. I think internal communication is essential at this time. And so I think it's striking that balance between trying to still be fun and lighthearted while we're all in the midst of challenge. So for example, we use Basecamp as a system for our company to allow our staff to stay informed. And we've created sections on Basecamp where we are sharing stranded at home memes that we all find funny. We've all talked about Tiger King. We've all talked about all the things that everybody else is talking about. I think, you spend more time normally with your employees than you do your own family in general. So this is a unique time where we're separated, but together alone, as they like to say. So I am a big believer in continuing with internal marketing and mixing both the need to know type stuff with the just keeping it lighthearted and keeping the team cohesive together. So.
Yeah, I love those suggestions. What we are doing and what I've seen other clients do that's really helpful is as much structure as you can also give some of those things. That is helpful for staff members to kind of know, okay, this really is the time we're going to connect. We, again, write a lot of notes, and we do a 9:30 huddle every morning with our staff, and then we do dress up challenges. If you go to the Intessa Instagram, you will see us in very strange outfits, but it's something that really the team is excited about. We do a lot of Zoom calls and a lot of huddles. And again, the larger companies, I'm finding that doing those kind of video town halls has been really effective too. There are pet competitions, all kinds of things. Team challenges. I know that I have a client who, in fairness to the working parents who are doing the working while teaching thing, they've structured the teams where it's some people who have the children at home and some people who don't, to do competitions that kind of level the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, I would just add too, we've done like shared riddles that everybody is trying to solve. We've also, now that with Zoom that allows you to do virtual backgrounds, seen a lot of fun. And one idea I saw that was great was have everybody post, if they can, a virtual background that shows them at one of their favorite travel destinations that they went to. So when you guys are doing virtual happy hours or anything, you can also say, hey, I'm sitting here on the beach in Hawaii, which is where we last took a trip, or things like that. So.
Yeah.
Great. I think we'll ask one more from the pre-registration, then we'll move over to the live questions. And this is kind of an interesting one, and I'd love to know both of your feelings on this. Is there a social media platform that is best for communicating during a crisis in empathetic marketing, or is it appropriate to use all platforms?
Who goes first?
You can go, Margie.
Go ahead, Margie.
Okay. Yeah, this is a great question. I appreciate someone asking this one. The trick with social media is, again, know your audience. If you are looking for young, very young people, they're not on Facebook, so don't worry about Facebook. If you're looking to reach media and maybe kind of the grass tops kind of movers and shakers of the town, go to Twitter. If you're looking for just to really hit people with where the need is, then I would do social media advertising and email. So you really have to think, who's my audience and what do they need from me? What do I have to offer them? But I would never say just do all of the channels. It's a lot of effort. And if your audience isn't there, you don't need to do it.
Eric, anything to add on that one?
No, I concur exactly with Margie that, I mean, you can go online or talk to somebody at a firm about who the demographics are and to know your audience, but it's 100% about knowing your audience and going to them via those correct channels rather than just assuming that they're going to find you there.
Okay, great. We'll move into some of these questions. The person didn't give their name, but if we're releasing content to raise awareness about essential business services, how do we not come across as if we're profiting off the pandemic right now?
Derek, you want to go first?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll take that. So I think Margie touched on a few minutes ago where kind of what are media looking for today and what are people doing? So I would not in this time period do any kind of pitching of something that has no relationship to the situation that we're dealing with or trying to get your story out. What the media are looking for right now are trend related stories that tie in whatever local businesses or others are doing to help the broader community and things like that. So I would look at everything you're looking at doing through the lens of, yes, we all know that businesses are struggling right now, they need to survive, but to really strike that balance between coming across as self-promotional and saying, in this challenging time, we as a business have decided to do this, we're gonna launch this, we're making masks, we're doing whatever it is, and you can kind of weave in your other story, but it needs to have some tie into what's going on.
Great. We'll flip to two questions over because the second one's kind of the same. But it was a question about how do you reach out to new business? So how does business development happen if you don't already have a relationship with that employee or company already?
I would
Margie?
say, yeah, carefully. I would be really careful about drumming up new business right now. The biggest bang for your buck is, and I mean this in a place of love, is the upsell to existing customers, existing members, existing donors, existing everything, volunteers, and get that first, really get that nailed down first. And if you feel like you've really communicated to them and that maybe, I would say maybe in another couple of weeks, you could probably then start thinking about communicating to potential new customers, but I wouldn't be too invasive about it. This is a challenging time to think about too much business development. And I say that as a business owner who needs to do business development, but you just need to do it carefully. And I would say I'd give it another couple of weeks.
I agree 100%. And I would just add, yeah, now is not the time to be going out and trying to drum up a ton of business. Is trying to hunker down and help all of those clients and customers that you already have and are loyal to you and work with you. And I think going back to your authenticity as a company, as a brand, is going to shine through. And if people see that your heart is in the right place and you're doing the right thing, when that time comes that they're looking for somebody to work with and help, then hopefully they go to you. But you should not be trying to sell your services right now.
Okay. Well, if we don't finish these questions, we'll try to ask the panelists to maybe write short answers to anything we don't get to. We're going to take probably two more, and and then wrap up. We want to be conscious of time. This one can go to Derek. Any recommendations on how to communicate with furloughed employees and making them feel as if they're still part of a company family?
Yeah, I think that if you have been an organization that's decided to furlough your employees, because they're furloughed doesn't mean that they're no longer employees of your company, and they deserve to be communicated with just as equally as those people who have been fortunate to stay on payroll during the time and things like that. So I think making sure you're sharing any internal updates with them, whether if you're communicating, you know, on various platforms, whatever you're putting together, you want them to feel included. And I think you need to be empathetic, obviously, to the situation. None of us want to be in a situation where we're furloughing our employees or things like that. But again, the idea of a furlough is that you're keeping them on your team, not that you're letting them go. So whatever you can do to continue to engage them, I think you want to continue to do, whatever that platform may be.
Okay, we're going to go to Ronnie's question. So Ronnie's a salesman and we're going to go to Margie for this one first, and then Derek can add anything if he wants. I'm a salesman for a freight forwarding company. We are considered an essential business. We move, ship domestically and internationally. And we are one of the few companies in this industry who did not submit force majeure. So we're still working. How would you suggest for people like me to reach out with this service?
Can I ask if you mean, and type it in, do you mean to your employees or to potential customers? Because that's
whatever way you want.
Customers. Oh, thank you. So how would you reach out to customers? You know, I think you have a story that is really human and beautiful right now. You are kind of this surprise messenger, this unsuspected essential employee. And so your story, if you had video or photos of any of your teammates and colleagues, you know, getting in that truck and hauling that load, when nobody thinks about the kind of unsung heroes that if it weren't for those folks, like how would anything happen? That's a really cool story. And then after you've told that story a little bit, then you can start saying, all right, how can we help you meet your next business goal? Because we're essential and we're proven we can tackle this. So I think if you start with that human element, like we talked about, then you can move on to more of the sell.
Okay, great. So with that, we will try to get to some of more of these questions with our panelists after we conclude. But a couple of them will be answered probably in the materials we're going to be sending with the follow-up. So things like guides and the direct media, the direct mail for people that don't have computers and social media and those kind of things will be in there. We want to thank Margie and Derek and of course Supervisor Cox for being part of our panel today. We've recorded this webinar. It's going to be available on demand on our website at downtownsandiego.org. And we will also send a follow-up email to the participants of this call with links and information for the resources mentioned today. Thank you again to everyone who participated, and thank you to everyone who tuned in and joined us for the conversation. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be hosting a webinar next Thursday, April 16th, regarding resources and plans to support the unsheltered population. Please stay tuned for more information. If you have ideas for other resources that would be helpful, please feel free to contact us at Downtown San Diego Partnership. And please do take the survey that will be in the follow-up email as well, because we want to be relevant and helpful to the people that are investing an hour of their time. Stay safe, stay strong, and we look forward to working with all of you not only in this stage, but also as we figure out the future of economic recovery together.